The desperate call. The red emergency lights bathed Lieutenant Commander Ilara Chen's face as she dragged herself across the shattered command center of Elysium 9. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, but the pain was nothing compared to the anguish of watching her colony fall. Status report. She croaked into her comm unit, knowing full well what the answer would be. Southern Quadrant overrun. Eastern defense grid offline. Western residential zones. Her security chief's voice cracked. There's no one left, Commander. Elysium 9 had been humanity's pride. A self-sufficient colony that represented mankind's successful expansion to the Cygnus system. 3,000 civilians. 500 security personnel. State-of-the-art defenses. None of it had mattered when the alien ships appeared without warning 6 hours ago. They weren't like any known species in the galactic registry. Their vessels resembled massive obsidian shards, absorbing rather than reflecting light. They had ignored all communication attempts. Their weapons cut through Elysium's shields like they weren't even there. Chen reached the emergency communications console, the only system with its own isolated power supply. Through the viewport, she could see 3 of the alien vessels hovering over the colony's central hub, mechanical appendages extending downward to methodically harvest something from the buildings below. Commander, a voice called from the doorway. Lieutenant Rivera stumbled in, clutching a bleeding wound in his side. They're breaching the command center's outer doors. We have minutes, maybe less. Chen nodded grimly. Help me with this. Together, they pried open the panel beneath the communications array, revealing a dusty, obsolete transmitter. Equipment that hadn't been used in decades. What is that? Rivera asked. Our last hope, Chen replied, powering up the ancient system. Back during the Perseus conflict, before either of us was born, Earth developed a special response team for extinction-level threats. Project Chimera. Her fingers flew over the unfamiliar controls. They were decommissioned after the war. Too dangerous, too unpredictable. But their emergency frequency was never removed from colonial protocols. Rivera stared at her. You're calling it a myth. Commander, I've heard the stories about the chimeras, but they're just propaganda. Tales to scare the enemy. Chen didn't look up as she calibrated the transmitter. They're real. My grandfather helped design their neural enhancements. She paused, her voice dropping. If even half of what he told me is true, they're our only chance for justice. The sound of metal tearing echoed from beyond the command center's inner doors. Buy me 2 minutes, Chen ordered. Rivera nodded, drawing his sidearm and moving to the door. Chen turned back to the transmitter, setting it to the classified frequency and beginning her broadcast. This is Lieutenant Commander Ilara Chen of Elysium 9 Colony in the Cygnus system. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Our defenses have failed. Civilian casualties. She swallowed hard. Nearly total. This is a priority Omega emergency transmission on Chimera frequency. Authentication code. Prometheus 7 Epsilon. Gunfire erupted behind her as Rivera engaged the first of the aliens to breach the inner door. Chen continued, her voice growing stronger. Unknown hostiles demonstrating technology beyond current galactic registry entries. They show no interest in communication. They are systematically destroying everything, and she hesitated, watching through the viewport as the aliens extracted what looked like glowing blue cores from the colony's power plant, harvesting our technology and resources, sending all sensor data now. The inner door exploded inward. Rivera screamed, then fell silent. Chen turned to face 3 tall, insectoid figures entering the command center. Their carapaces gleamed like polished obsidian, with multiple limbs ending in both natural claws and technological implements. Where eyes should be, they had clusters of iridescent orbs that shifted and refocused as they surveyed the room. Chen straightened her back, ignoring the pain. If anyone receives this, avenge Elysium. Make them pay. She pressed the final transmission sequence just as one of the aliens raised a limb toward her. A pulse of energy struck her chest, and darkness claimed her. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean on Earth, in a facility that officially didn't exist, an alert sounded for the first time in 27 years. General Malcolm Hayes looked up sharply from his desk as his aide burst through the door. "Sir, we've received a priority Omega transmission on the old Chimera frequency." Hayes felt his blood run cold. "Authenticated. Already confirmed, sir. It's from Elysium 9. Authentication code checks out." Hayes stood, moving to the secure terminal on his wall. "Show me." The desperate message from Lieutenant Commander Chen played, ending with her final defiant words before transmission cut abruptly. Hayes's weathered face remained impassive, but his knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of his desk. "Time delay?" he asked. 16 days, sir, given their location in Cygnus." Hayes was silent for a long moment. "Prepare the Chimera revival protocols, and get me the Secretary General. We're about to break the Lausanne Treaty." 3 hours later, Hayes stood in the observation room of Facility Deep Blue, watching as technicians scurried around 7 massive stasis chambers that hadn't been opened since the end of the Perseus conflict. The Secretary General's authorization had come through with surprising speed. The attack on Elysium 9 wasn't an isolated incident. 3 other frontier outposts had gone silent in the past month. Dr. Sharma, the facility's chief medical officer, approached Hayes with a tablet. "Revival sequence initiated, General. Vital signs are stabilizing. Brain activity increasing." "How long?" Hayes asked. "For full cognitive function. 4 hours. For combat readiness." Sharma shrugged. "With these 7. The moment they open their eyes." Hayes nodded, moving closer to the observation window. The stasis pods were arranged in a semicircle, each labeled with a designation rather than a name. Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Zeta, Omega. Project Chimera. 7 volunteers who had undergone extensive genetic, cybernetic, and neural modifications to become something more than human. Super soldiers created for a war that ended before they saw much action. Too dangerous to deploy in peacetime. Too valuable to terminate. So they slept, forgotten by most of humanity, waiting for the day when mankind faced extinction once more. The stasis pod marked Alpha hissed open first, mist rolling out as its occupant's eyes snapped open. Unnaturally bright blue against dark skin. Captain Ascent Wright, formerly of Earth Special Forces, now Alpha of Chimera Squad, sat up with fluid precision, his movements too perfect to be entirely human. One by one, the other pods opened. Each chimera awakened instantly alert, their enhanced physiology bypassing the disorientation normally associated with stasis revival. Wright's gaze found Hayes through the observation window. There was recognition there, and something else. Hunger. Hayes pressed the intercom. "Captain Wright, welcome back." "General." Wright's voice was deep, resonant. A priority Omega was issued. Not a question. A statement. Elysium 9 colony in the Cygnus system. Unknown hostiles. Total colony loss projected. Wright nodded once, turning to look at his team as they emerged from their pods. Each moved with the same unnerving precision, their bodies honed weapons. Beta, Lieutenant Maya Cohen, infiltration specialist. Her entire nervous system had been rewired for superhuman reflexes and sensory processing. Gamma, Dr. Kaido Nakamura, tactical specialist. His cerebral enhancements allowed him to process battlefield information at speeds no normal human could match. Delta, Commander Sasha Volkov, heavy weapons expert. Her skeletal structure had been reinforced with experimental composites to handle the recoil of ordnance that would tear a normal human apart. Epsilon, Lieutenant Marcus Jensen, communications specialist. Implants throughout his auditory and vocal systems allowed him to intercept, decode, and mimic any form of communication. Zeta, Major Layla Massoud, infiltration and assassination specialist. Her modified cardiovascular system could alter her heat signature and biochemistry to avoid detection. Omega, Commander Victor Resnick, squad's second in command. His enhancements focused on durability and regeneration, making him nearly impossible to kill by conventional means. "How long have we been under?" Wright asked, rolling his shoulders as if testing for stiffness that wasn't there. 27 years, Hayes answered. None of the chimeras showed surprise. Their enhanced minds had already calculated the approximate time from the subtle technological changes in the revival chamber. Transport. Wright continued, all business. The UES Nemesis is being prepped, stealth carrier with our newest FTL drive. It can reach Elysium 9 in 12 days. Wright's eyes narrowed slightly, calculating, assessing. The transmission is already 16 days old. The colony is lost. Yes. Then our mission is not rescue. It's reconnaissance and retaliation. Hayes nodded. Find out what happened. Find out who they are. Make sure they never do it again. The 7 chimeras exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them that went beyond words. They had been created for this exact scenario, when humanity faced an existential threat that conventional forces couldn't handle. "We'll need weapons," Wright said. "Everything we have," Hayes confirmed. "The Lausanne Treaty has been temporarily suspended. Project Chimera is fully reactivated with all prior authorizations." Wright stood, his enhanced frame towering over the revival technicians, who instinctively backed away. The other chimeras rose as well, a synchronized movement that reminded Hayes why people had feared them. "Mission parameters?" Wright asked. "Primary, intelligence gathering on hostile species and capabilities. Secondary, assess threat level to Earth and core colonies." Hayes paused. "Tertiary, deliver an appropriate response." Wright's lips curved into something that resembled a smile, but lacked any warmth. "Understood, General. The Chimera Squad is operational." As the 7 super soldiers moved toward the equipment room with perfect coordination, Hayes couldn't help but wonder if he'd just unleashed humanity's saviors, or something else entirely. Vengeance unleashed. The UES Nemesis cut through the darkness of space, its stealth systems absorbing rather than reflecting the distant starlight. Despite being Earth's most advanced warship, it seemed primitive compared to its 7 specialized passengers, who spent most of the 12-day journey preparing in the ship's combat simulation chamber. Captain Wright stood in the tactical room, studying the holographic display of the Cygnus system. His enhanced vision could detect minute details in the projection that would be invisible to normal human eyesight. "Approaching Elysium 9 in 20 minutes, Captain," the ship's AI announced. Wright didn't respond immediately. His neural implants were processing multiple scenarios simultaneously, calculating probabilities, tactical options, and potential outcomes. "Status," he finally said, a single word that mobilized his team. Lieutenant Cohen approached the display, her movements fluid and precise. Long-range scans show 3 alien vessels still in orbit around Elysium 9. Colony infrastructure appears heavily damaged but partially intact. Dr. Nakamura, who had been analyzing the data from Lieutenant Commander Chen's final transmission, looked up from his station. "Their harvesting pattern is systematic. They're extracting specific components, primarily power cores, quantum processors, and certain rare earth elements." "Resource raiders," Commander Volkov suggested, her voice carrying the slight metallic undertone that was a side effect of her vocal enhancements. "No," Wright replied. "Look at the precision. The patience. This isn't scavenging. It's collection." Commander Resnick joined them at the display, his massive frame making even the spacious tactical room feel crowded. "Collection for what purpose?" Lieutenant Jensen, who had been silent until now, touched his temple where neural interfaces connected directly to his auditory cortex. "I've been analyzing their communications. It's not language as we understand it, more like modulated energy pulses, but there's a pattern that repeats whenever they extract something significant." "Translation," Wright prompted. "Incomplete, but the closest approximation would be contribution to the ascendance." Major Masoud, who had been monitoring the aliens' movement patterns, raised an eyebrow. Religious, or evolutionary, Dr. Nakamura suggested. They could be harvesting technology to facilitate some kind of species-wide advancement. Wright considered this for a moment, then turned to the ship's captain who had been observing from the doorway with poorly concealed unease. "We'll deploy in the Ghost drop pods, maintain stealth orbit, and be prepared for immediate extraction on my signal." The captain nodded stiffly. Like most of the crew, he found the Chimerous presence disturbing. They moved too perfectly, reacted too quickly, and their eyes never seemed to blink at the normal human rate. 30 minutes later, 7 black pods silently descended toward Elysium 9's surface, their stealth technology rendering them virtually undetectable. They landed in what had once been the colony's central plaza, now a landscape of twisted metal and shattered concrete. The chimeras emerged in perfect synchronization, each armed with weapons specifically tailored to their enhancements. Wright scanned the surroundings, his augmented senses taking in details that would overwhelm a normal human brain. Spread out. 500-meter radius. Jensen, monitor all frequencies. Masoud, thermal sweep. Nakamura, tactical assessment. Move. They dispersed like shadows, each taking a different sector of the ruined colony. Wright moved toward what had been the command center, stepping over debris with inhuman grace. Inside the shattered building, he found Lieutenant Commander Chen's body where she had fallen. Her final defiant expression was still frozen on her face. Wright knelt beside her, placing a small device on her forehead that scanned her brain's residual electrical patterns, a technology still classified on Earth. Images flickered through his mind. Chen's final moments, the aliens entering, their movements, their focused attention on specific technology. Wright absorbed it all, his enhanced brain storing every detail. "Alpha, I found something." Masoud's voice came through their secure channel. "Northwest Quadrant, subsection 3. Wright arrived to find Masoud standing before what appeared to be a harvesting station the aliens had established. Scattered around it were human bodies, or what remained of them. They had been systematically dissected, their neural tissue carefully extracted and preserved in crystalline containers. "They're studying us," Masoud said quietly. "Not just our technology." Wright approached one of the containers, watching as the neural tissue inside pulsed with faint electrical activity. "Still alive," he observed. "Consciousness preserved without the body." "Sir," Jensen's voice cut in urgently. "Movement from the orbital vessels. They've detected us." Wright's decision was immediate. Engage Protocol Thanatos. Primary targets, harvesting equipment and neural samples. Secondary, alien combatants. Tertiary, their vessels if possible. The Chimerous acknowledged with a single click over the comm. No words needed. Years of training and their neural link made verbose communication unnecessary. Within minutes, alien dropships began descending toward the colony. Unlike their methodical harvesting, this response was rapid and aggressive. Dozens of the insectoid beings deployed, their limbs reconfiguring into weapon configurations. The battle that followed would have been incomprehensible to normal human observers. The Chimerous moved with impossible speed and coordination, each leveraging their unique enhancements. Cohen became virtually invisible, her enhanced nervous system allowing her to move in the microsecond blind spots of the aliens' visual processing. She materialized behind them, one after another, severing critical neural clusters with her molecular blade. Volkov unleashed devastating firepower, her reinforced frame handling weapons that would tear a normal human apart from recoil alone. Each shot was precisely calculated to maximize damage to the aliens' most vulnerable points. Nakamura remained at a distance, his enhanced mind processing the battlefield in real time, directing the others with tactical precision that adapted to each new alien countermeasure seconds before they deployed it. Jensen intercepted and jammed the aliens' communications, creating confusion in their ranks and isolating smaller groups for the team to eliminate. Masoud slipped through their formations like a ghost, her modified biology rendering her nearly undetectable as she systematically destroyed their harvesting equipment and freed the preserved neural tissue from its containers. Resnick absorbed punishment that would have killed any normal human dozens of times over, drawing fire and attention while regenerating from wounds that should have been fatal. And Wright, Alpha, moved through it all like a force of nature, his every action economical and lethal. He had been enhanced not for any single specialization, but for leadership, his neural patterns modified to integrate the inputs from all his team members simultaneously, making decisions with a speed and precision that even the most advanced AI couldn't match. The aliens, despite their advanced technology, had never encountered anything like the chimeras. Their tactics were designed for conventional forces, not 7 entities that operated more like a single organism with distributed bodies. Within 30 minutes, the ground forces had been eliminated, the harvesting equipment destroyed, the preserved human consciousness freed from their crystalline prisons, a mercy even if it meant true death for the colonists who had been kept in that twilight state. But the alien vessels remained in orbit, already charging weapons that could glass the entire colony from space. Nemesis, Wright communicated to the stealth ship. Deploy package Helios. The ship's captain's voice came back, hesitant. Captain Wright, package Helios is a prototype. It hasn't been field tested. Deploy it, Wright repeated, his tone leaving no room for discussion. Moments later, a small projectile launched from the Nemesis, streaking toward the nearest alien vessel. It was Earth's newest weapon, a concentrated gravitational distortion device designed to create a localized singularity. The alien ship attempted evasive maneuvers too late. The device detonated, creating a sphere of warped space-time that crushed 1/3 of the vessel before dissipating. The damaged ship listed in orbit, its systems failing. The remaining 2 vessels immediately began charging their engines, not to attack, but to flee. They're retreating, Jensen reported, monitoring their communications. But they're sending out a long-range signal first, calling for reinforcements, Wright concluded. Nemesis, can you intercept that transmission's destination coordinates? Affirmative, the ship's eye responded. Signal directed toward coordinates in the boot's void, approximately 700 light-years distant. Wright exchanged glances with his team, a silent communication passing between them. The boot's void, one of the largest empty regions of space known to human astronomy. Empty, except apparently for whatever these aliens called home. As the alien vessels jumped to FTL, Wright made his decision. Nemesis, prepare for immediate extraction. We're bringing samples of their technology and biological components for analysis. 6 hours later, the Chimera squad stood in the Nemesis' secure communications room as Wright delivered their report to General Hayes on Earth. The Elysium-9 is confirmed lost, sir. All colonists deceased. The aliens appear to be part of a collective consciousness they refer to as the Ascendants. They're harvesting both technology and neural tissue from multiple species, apparently in service of some evolutionary or technological leap. Hayes' holographic image looked grim. Threat assessment. Severe, Wright replied without hesitation. Their technology exceeds ours in several key areas. However, he paused. They've never encountered anything like the chimeras before. Their tactics suggest they're accustomed to overwhelming conventional forces, but are vulnerable to our enhanced capabilities. Recommendations? Hayes asked. Wright's enhanced eyes seemed to glow slightly in the dim light of the communications room. Immediate reactivation of all dormant Chimera facilities, accelerated production of next-generation units, and authorization for us to take the Nemesis directly to the coordinates we intercepted. Hayes was silent for a long moment, weighing the implications. The Chimera program had been shut down for good reasons. Ethical concerns, fears of creating a post-human military force that might one day turn on its creators. But against this new threat, the Secretary General has already convened an emergency session of the United Earth Council. Hayes finally said, I'll present your findings. In the meantime, Return to Earth for debriefing. And he hesitated. Upgrades. Wright nodded once. There's one more thing, General. We found evidence this wasn't their first encounter with humans. They've been testing our frontier defenses for months, maybe years. This was just the first large-scale attack. Why now? Hayes wondered. Because they're afraid. Commander Resnick spoke up, his deep voice resonating in the small room. The neural tissue analysis suggests they detected something in our evolutionary trajectory that concerns them. They see a threat. Wright's lips curved into that same cold smile he had shown upon awakening. They should be afraid, General. They just didn't know why until now. As the communication ended, Wright turned to his team. Earth would debate, politicians would argue, but the chimeras had already decided their course. Humanity had created them for this moment, when the species faced extinction at the hands of something it couldn't understand or defeat with conventional means. Set course for Earth, Wright ordered, and prepare the combat simulation chamber. I want scenarios running against their tactics continuously until we arrive. The 7 enhanced soldiers moved with perfect coordination, their purpose renewed. They had been built to be humanity's last line of defense, its ultimate weapons. And now, after decades of sleep, they had an enemy worthy of their capabilities. The war had just begun.